about today?
We are talking about the forgotten plague, and it was surprisingly deadly, of Dance Mania, which was a real thing.
When I saw the title for this one, I was like, this has got to be a modern thing, right? Like Dance Mania even sounds super modern.
Yeah,
It sounds
it
like,
sounds like a joke,
yeah,
but it's not.
it sounds like
Many
one of
people
those
died.
in quite nasty ways, like
Yeah.
exhaustion.
Yeah.
It sounds like one of those, those arcade things where you have to, you've got the four arrows and you got to dance on the four arrows, and then you got to, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
describing
I
this
do.
terribly, but I feel like everyone must know what I
Dance
mean.
Dance Revolution and
Yeah,
those.
that's
I
it.
don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds like one of those, but it's not. It's horrible and it involves death.
Yeah. No, and we're going to start out with a quote about that very thing from a 1625
Whoa.
Strasbourg Chronicle of
Where's our
Klein-Cowl. What?
where's our quick fact? No quick fact today.
No, I didn't have time. And plus,
Deep
this is a really long
sadness.
one, so yeah.
Okay, I'll make do without my quick fact.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, there's a quote. You want me to read the quote? Where's it from?
Yes. 1625 Strasbourg Chronicle of Klein-Cowl, maybe?
Sure. Don't know. Amidst our people, here is come the madness of the dance. In every town there are now some who fall upon a trance. It drives them ever night and day. They scarcely stop for breath, till some have dropped along the way, and some are met by death. We're like all news. Is this a news article? Did they rhyme them in the past?
No, this was like a poem of the one of the events. There's many events, as we'll get into going back. I think it was the 7th century was the first known instance. It was I didn't actually write that one down, but I think it was like a priest. There was some kids basically dancing outside the thing and making a ruckus, and so that he supposedly cursed them, and then they danced for like a year. But obviously that's probably mostly exaggerated. But that is the first instance of something like that, and then later it caught on to much more like a definitely not a legend, quite well documented. So before we get into any of that, though, we're going to start with we're going to move back a few hundred years from that 1625 reference to the 14th century. So at this point, you had the international trade was booming there. You had the Silk Road from China to England and all that, spreading lots of commerce, but also contagious diseases. And so
And drugs.
Yeah.
Like I read about that Silk Road and the opium trade and all this stuff. Super interesting time in history. And then later on, there was that pirate guy who was selling drugs on the internet. Dread Pirate someone or other. Did you not read this story? It's amazing.
No.
It was this guy who started the Silk Road website, which was a website where apparently you could buy like heroin on the internet and shit. Whoops, I shouldn't swear on this live show. Can't edit it out when it's live. Noted. He was selling drugs on the internet, and then I think he was Dutch, and then there was some famous case, like he got extradited, and now he's in prison for like 400 years. It's intense.
Oh, I've not heard of that.
Should definitely do a video about it. If you haven't, it's a super interesting story. We should do that on a.
Was he called the Dread Pirate Roberts?
That's him, yeah.
Yeah, that's from The Princess Bride, which you
is it really?
Seen still. Yeah.
No, I haven't seen. I posted that on Twitter, and I was thinking about doing. Apparently, there's an app called Rabbit, which lets you watch TV shows and movies with people live. And I was thinking that at some point I would definitely schedule me watching the Princess Bride live so I can interact with people and like pause it and say like, what's this about? Or it's like, oh, that cultural reference that I've just been ignorant of.
You'll get a lot of new stuff. Yeah. In any event, so going to the Crimean Peninsula there in the port city of Kaffa was the first known site of the Black Death, which was soon to rage across Europe. And so from 1346 to 1353, 60% of the entire European population died in that little tiny span, 7 or 8 years of the Black Death.
Yeah.
And that reduced the Earth's population from 430 million people down to about 350 to 375 million people.
And that was just in Europe, right?
Yeah, this was just Europe. It was 60%, more than half, like every other person in Europe died in that span. And so this brings us around, so a couple decades after the peak of the Black Death. So
also, isn't it crazy that 700 years ago, the population of the Earth was only, after the Black Death, 350 million?
The
all
even
throughout.
crazier is you can go back, like, the mitochondrial Eve and stuff, where you can trace it back to there was, like, one woman who we're all kind of related to,
Yeah,
not necessarily, like, directly, but there is one woman that, like, every human on the planet seems to be related to, and there was before her, I think there was something Adam, Y chromosome Adam, I think he was before her or after, I can't remember, that we're also all related to, I can't remember, it was a big span gap, and they just kinda come up with those names, but it's
I
quite
wonder where they
fascinating.
got those names from.
Yeah, but the fascinating thing is the human population was so small at that point that you could all have like a, a common or it was small enough that then, later down the line we can all be interconnected enough to be related to these two people. And then there was
And
there was
all
other
to each
instances
other.
too. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yay!
Yeah. So where were we? So peak of the Black Death. You go a couple decades after that, and this is when things are starting to get back to normal. But then just like normal, crappy for that time to be a human.
Yeah.
So then along the ride,
Don't forget, we live in the future and it's awesome.
yeah,
In the
way more
like
awesome.
all of the complaints, everything that we complain about, it's you just be glad
It's-
you're not alive in the
yeah.
14th century.
Just be glad that, like, by just as a matter of course, half your children don't die, by the age of 5 and, just like it happens to everyone.
Yeah.
So this is, Black Death. It's still, people are still dying from stuff, but it's not like the mass thing like it
Mhm.
was. And then, things are getting back to normal. And then you have this huge deluge that occurs along the Rhine River there, and it rose 34 feet, or for non-freedom units, that's about 10 meters. So
Ha ha
that,
ha.
yeah. So that ends up drowning, like, obviously, many towns along the rivers and everything are just, underwater. Lots of homes are destroyed, and this obviously causes a huge also, shortage of crops and things like that, so everyone's starving shortly thereafter because it's just a good time to be alive. So this all brings us, finally, to June 24th, 1374.
Mhm.
And so this is the first of the best documented Dance Mania, which we'll get into. The second one is way better documented than this one, but this one is so widely reported that we at least know the broad swaths of things.
Mhm.
I should mention that it's also called Saint John's Dance or Saint Vitus's Dance or the Dance Plague, and we'll get into why Saint Vitus and Saint John in a bit. But so it is June 24th, 1374. And so on the
Mhm.
streets of Aachen, is that pronounced Aachen, do you
I've
think?
actually been to Aachen a couple of times.
Yeah, yeah.
They have an amazing Yeah, I have. They have an amazing Christmas market. And when I was at school, I went to school in England, obviously, and once
Yeah.
a year for the Christmas market, we'd do a school trip out there. But it's not close. You think Europe's
Mhm,
small, but Germany's still quite far away, and you've got to cross a channel to get there,
mhm,
or go
mhm.
under a channel in this case. We'd take a coach out at some ridiculously early hour of the morning. We'd go to the Aachen Christmas market. We'd buy junk, or whatever Christmas markety things that 12-year-old boys buy. I don't know, generally gifts that I guess my parents didn't actually want. And then we'd come back at like midnight. So we'd do this trip in one day. And
Mhm.
I don't know. In retrospect, that seems insane because
Yeah.
now when I have to drive 2 hours to go away for the weekend, I'm like, oh, well, it's 2 hours and it's only one overnight. And I'm like, maybe not. And it's like, no, we went to Aachen in a day on like a crappy school bus. Um,
That is on a school bus, it seems like.
well, I'm not like what you imagine as a school bus. It was like a big coach, but yeah,
Like a big coach. Now I'm
because we don't have
envisioning
the
like a
yellow school
a
buses that you don't
horse-drawn.
have. No, oh, you don't call them coaches. Wow, we are having some communication issues today. Uh, a coach is like a fancy bus.
Okay,
Imagine a Greyhound, like a Greyhound bus,
okay. But
but
without bus
not a
people?
piece of crap. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And also the seats are, not horribly stained and it doesn't smell funny.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, the
You don't have people that
Greyhound
might murder
buses.
you when you get off?
I told you I spent a month traveling the US on Greyhound buses, right? It was an experience
Yeah,
of American culture, I'll tell you that.
yeah, yeah. Bus people are
Sorry,
a
that
real
was
thing.
quite the tangent.
Yeah, but
This
it
was
is
all based off
Aachen.
Aachen. Yeah.
Aachen, okay. Aachen, Germany. So the people just started. I'll just backtrack. June 24th, 1374.
Thank
The
you.
people in Aachen, Germany, they just started dancing around for some reason. This one, it's not really documented how it started, but just it was in that town.
Mm.
So they're not just dancing, it's a very frantic dancing, and they seem to be, like, in a trance and also experiencing hallucinations and doing a lot of other things we'll get into, on the later, better documented instance. So this ends up swelling to thousands of people in that region, and then it spreads to France, where in France alone, there was a reported anyway, 11,000 people were afflicted with the dance mania, the dance plague.
Yeah.
So this had happened in isolated instances, little pockets here and there. So like another one is Erfurt, Germany in 1247. There was one, a couple, or well, more than a couple hundred, it was about 300 or 400, I think, people were dancing on a bridge in this sort of dance mania frantic thing over the Moselle or Moselle River, and then it collapsed and 200 of them died.
Oh
But
my.
the survivors were sent to the St. Vitus's, there was, like, a chapel nearby, and so
Yeah.
they were sent there to get cured because St. Vitus was like, the patron saint of dance or something like that, and so it was just thought to be like a curse for that. But important to note here,
As
the
you
Saint
do.
the St. Vitus thing actually seems to have worked at curing them, and this is like a theme going on, like, this actually worked to cure them, to take the people to a St. Vitus, shrine or chapel or whatever, and then do a little ritual. Um, so this brings us to the much, much, much better documented Dance Mania event that was also pretty big, not as big as this one was, but in July of 1518. So before leading up to this, once again, there was a series of poor harvests. There also super long winters, and this resulted in a lot of famine, lots of disease. The syphilis was rearing its head at this point in Europe for
Mhm.
the seemingly the first time, although that's debated, but at least extremely widespread and reported. So it was perhaps a new disease or whatever. So people were unhappy, people were dying, people were starving. And this
Yeah,
brings us,
can you imagine how much it would suck where like a poor harvest affects your life?
yeah, because they just, well, and they didn't really have, like, over the winters, they didn't have great means of storing a lot of the foods from, it would just go bad eventually. This is why, like, ham was traditional around spring, because ham, the way they cure it, it lasts longer than the other meats. And you had, like, seasons for meats, which we just don't really have anymore because you just go to the store and buy whatever. But that's like a
Of
thing if
course.
it's not so there were these seasons for meats, and this is why a lot of the holidays like Thanksgiving has turkey, and the ham for like Easter, or lamb is also great for Easter because the lambs are just born, that sort
Mhm.
of thing. So anyways, going back to this event, we actually know who started it. There was one woman who started this whole thing. It was a woman by the name of Frau Trophia, or Trophia. So on July 14th,
Mhm.
1518, Frau, she steps out of her home in Strasbourg
Hang on.
house.
Is she German? Yeah, she's
She is
German. Doesn't
she's
Frau mean
French.
like oh,
Well, but right on the border, like, it's literally, like, right on the border of the town of Alsace, in or Strasbourg in Alsace, France. I
Alsace, I
looked
think.
Okay, yeah, I looked it up, and it is, like, right on the border, like, super close. So
But doesn't Frau mean like miss or Mrs. in German?
does it?
I'm really not sure because then it
Well,
might
this
just
is
be
this
miss.
is this is the name everyone gives everywhere, so
Oh,
maybe no
okay.
one knows her first name. Maybe it is just Frau Truffia, like, it's
I don't know.
Miss
I could be
Truffia.
totally wrong. Just go for
Yeah.
Frau.
Okay,
I
so
don't
July
speak German. I'm just like trying to remember like random.
Yeah. So July 14th, 1518, she steps out of her house in that border, town of Strasbourg, and she's right there. She steps out of
Sorry to interrupt you, but it's amazing that we're
Yeah,
doing this live because people in the chat are like, "Yeah, Frau means Mrs."
okay. So maybe no
Mm,
one
okay,
actually knows her
okay.
first name. I always just assumed it was Frau. Either
Hmm.
way, so that just ruins because I put Frau everywhere because I
Just
didn't
go
wanna
for
say
Frau.
Trophia.
It's fine.
Yeah, Mrs.
Perpetuate the lie, Damon.
Yeah. Alright, so she's out on the cobble street, and she just starts dancing very frantically, this sort of frantic dance that they do. There's no music, there's no other apparent motivation, and so we have, this one is so well documented because Swiss physician, and alchemist, Paracelsus? I don't know, what do you think? Paracelsus?
Paralsasos. I have no
Sure.
idea. Sure.
So anyway, the father of toxology, so that's the thing he was known
Oh,
for. So he chronicles this about 8 years later. He went to the town, he interviews people, and he chronicles like what happened, how did this start? And so
yeah.
Trophia's husband, apparently, according to him, tried to stop her from dancing. He goes out there, tries to get her to stop. She won't stop. She's not really like she's like not all there kind of thing. How
Mhm.
these people get.
Shocker.
Um, Yeah, so they just leave her. She's dancing there for hours and hours on end. She finally collapses from exhaustion, but it didn't stop there because when she woke up the next day, she gets up, her feet are bloodied and swollen, and she just starts dancing frantically again. Uh,
Mm.
yeah. And so she does this for 4 to 6 days. It's not quite clear exactly how long, but at that point, local authorities, they're intervening because, there's this crazy lady dancing. And so they come, they take her in a wagon to a shrine of Saint Vitus, and about
Mhm.
30 miles away, and they cure her of the affliction, and it totally works. Again, like she's instantly cured after this going to the Saint Vitus, which we'll get into why that is shortly. But
I'm gonna guess it's probably not something to do with magic.
no.
No,
No,
it's not
it's not.
magic.
And s But the problem is shortly thereafter, other people started
Yeah.
dancing, around hysterically in the town as well, and soon the numbers swelled into the hundreds, all doing this self-destructive dancing, uh, and so this is when the authorities, they consulted local physicians. This is what's wrong with these people, and so this, of
Mhm.
course, the general catch-all of hot blood was determined, and so normally.
I saw an amazing meme the other day. Someone shared it with me on Twitter, and it was like comparing like doctors today with doctors back in the day. Have you seen this?
No.
Oh, it's amazing. And it's like, why are doctors so boring today? And it would have like, has a stethoscope, wears a white coat. And it would be a doctor back in the day, and you'd have the picture of the doctor, when they were wearing like the plague masks, that looked kind of like they had a
Yeah.
giant beak, and they had a robe and a cane. And it's like, doctors back in the day, pimp cane, wears a cool beak mask, and deals with the ghosts in your blood. This is so good.
It's true. I
But
also
yeah.
love that other now we have the AEDs for, like, zapping people's hearts and everything that you see at, like,
Uh-huh.
pools and, like, public places, but back then, like, there was a time in Britain, I think it was, not I don't remember what century it was,
I
but
know
they
what you're
literally
talking
would.
about.
Yeah,
The
the
smoke in
bellows.
the ass. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and that was, like, the cure all, like, if you drowned, they would literally pull you out of the water and just, like, take your pants off, shove a tube up your butt, and just start bellows, like, adding some air, to get
No,
some
but it
air.
was with smoke, wasn't it? It wasn't just
Yes.
air. They'd
Yeah,
light
it
like a
was,
little
and they would
fire.
light a fire and get smoke, which would wake you up if you were able to be conscious, I suppose. That would, uh
Old school doctors.
well, and they had if you didn't have that around, the emergency was to use a pipe, so you'd put the embers in there and then put the pipe and then blow to get the.
I'd never use that pipe again.
Yeah, um,
A
but
pipe is
where
its
where
life,
where
its
were
useful
we?
lifespan
So,
is
yes,
over.
yeah,
Hot
the
blood.
hot blood. So, normally the cure for that would be, of course, to take them to a barber and have them bled, like, whether they slit their something and then bleed them out into a bowl, or just, leeches or whatever. So that's a normal thing, but there's hundreds of people that are doing this frantic dancing. It's not exactly practical. So they say the physicians recommend the cure, then, an alternate cure would be just to get them to dance it out. And so, sort of like the dance-a-thon cure all.
Mhm.
And so they ordered the authorities in the town ordered stages to be set up in the town centers and for people to dance on. And then
Amazing.
just to make sure people would dance as vigorously as possible, they hired musicians to play day and night, vigorous music, very boisterous, to get them to dance faster and whatnot. And so, as you might imagine, this had the opposite effect as what they were going for. And when you add music and a stage, then, like, more people started dancing.
And frantic music.
Yeah, exactly. And so this might sound super funny and like YouTube gold, but the truth is actually, like, it was actually probably a little frightening to watch because people were, like, vigorously dancing, jumping about. One account, they said they raged like beasts over the land, seemingly in a trance. You couldn't, get them to register what was going around them. They would scream and chant until they were completely exhausted and then just, like, flop over. And some of them died from, like, cardiac arrest and stuff like that. And some of them just from the violent, from jumping around and, like, that sort of thing. They would have injuries that they would
They
sustain
literally
and.
partied so hard they died.
Exactly. And, they would, when they were on the ground, often they would foam at the mouth, twitch around, like, gasping for air, like they couldn't breathe and all this. And then as soon as they recovered, they would get up and continue dancing and just do this kinda day and night with very few breaks. Like, some of them would come out of it for a while, and then they would
Mhm.
go and, like, eat or whatever, rest up, but then they would, be drawn back into it, like they couldn't stop themselves type of thing. Oh, and then other accounts were like they were squealing around, squealing like animals, like rolling around in the dirt, ripping off their clothes, having sex with each other, doing screaming for people to beat them and like beat the bottoms of their feet as they writhe on the ground in pain.
See,
And is generally,
now up until this point, I kind of was thinking, okay, so it's, in the head. It's got to, most of it's in the head. But then you get
yeah,
to this part, and it's like that's super
yeah,
specific. Like maybe there's something wrong
yeah.
with their feet, and that's why they need to be moving about.
Well, I was thinking
This is
because their
where
feet probably at this point got hurt a lot, so maybe it's like excruciating pain, and then I don't know, they've just kind of gone crazy a little bit and just like, you know, the pain
beat
of
it
it, or
more. Yeah, it's like after
yeah,
I've been whipped extensively, I'm like, you know what? Fix
yeah.
this. More whipping.
Well, they would fix the dancing is more dancing, so, yeah. So either way, they're
How are we going to cure this disease? More disease.
yeah. This was in Italy. I didn't cover the Italy part because that's sometimes considered like a separate thing, but it was something to do with the tarantula, like where they thought if people got bitten, they would have this dance happen, like they would suddenly be able to uncontrollably dance around, and so they would do this, and the cure there was as well to dance it out, basically dance hysterically, and they had little minor instances of this popping up as well, but in this case, it was thought to be rather than a curse from Saint Vitus, it was thought to be from like a bug bite or a spider bite and that sort of thing.
Okay.
But either way, when coming back to this, when it was very clear that the stages and music were having the opposite of the intended effect, they instead the authorities then said demolish the stages, and then they banned all dancing and music in the town. That actually something that lasted for a couple months up through September of that year, which they did have one exception, as one Strasbourg official noted.
If honorable persons wish to dance at weddings or celebrations of First Mass in their houses, they may do so using stringed instruments, but they are on their conscience not to use tambourines and drums. I love
And they
this.
didn't want anyone on the streets like hearing.
I love how broken we are as humans, just how our brains are so broken. We're just that, always the classic example. Oh, we sacrificed a goat yesterday and the volcano erupted. So sacrificing goats causes volcanoes to erupt.
Yeah,
Or I think it's normally said the other way around, right? Or it's the
yeah,
volcano hasn't
yeah,
erupted. Maybe it's all the goat sacrifice we do. Just
yeah.
our
It gets
brains love that correlation.
Yeah, we're gonna delve into the why of this later, and it gets a lot of that. It's totally just like
Sorry, getting ahead. Yeah,
our monkey brains cannot, yeah, or just monkey brains.
does not
Nothing you can,
compute.
yeah. So now they wanted to get all the people off the streets dancing because they realized with other people, when other people saw them dancing, then other people would join in on the dancing.
Yeah,
So they set up guild halls. Guild halls ordered to just put all the people that were frantically dancing in those guild halls so they could dance it out out of public
what's a
sight.
guild hall?
So it's just like a commerce, like a you might have a, I don't know, woodworkers guild or something, and then so like
Ah, okay, gotcha.
a warehouse basically. Um,
It sounds like a festival of some kind.
Yeah, yeah. So once they get everyone out of sight, then they go back to so they did have a cure that was curing people. This Miss Truffia was cured by this. So they started taking people by the wagon load to the shrine, and then other people, of course, would hear this. And so if they took a break, if they actually kind of came to their senses a little bit, then they would hear, oh, people are getting cured at the shrine of Saint Vitus. So they themselves would go to the journey just to make sure they wouldn't snap back into the dancing again. So it ends up they go, and there's the mechanism for actually curing them there was so they put a cross into their hands, and then they put red shoes on them, and it's not really, I don't know why the red shoes, but it was noted in some of the accounts that the people really hated the sight of red, like it, like, infuriated them for whatever reason. They didn't like it.
Like a
So
bull.
maybe that had something to do with it. Yeah, but not really like a bull, because bulls don't really care about the color red.
Ooh,
Yeah.
there you
Uh,
go. Today I found out.
Yeah, I can't remember if they're colorblind to that color or not, but either way, it's not the color, it's more the fact that the guy's standing there that, is and they're stuck with those, what are those called? The things they stick them with
Picadors.
to make them really mad. Yeah.
Uh,
Either
I
way.
know the guy who does it is called a picador. I've got a Spanish friend. I was talking to him about this, and
Yeah.
because I know we did a video about the bullfighting. Was it you and I, or did I do it on another channel?
I don't
Doesn't
think
matter.
we have, but I've covered it before too, but I don't think we've done it on
Bull
the YouTube channel.
bullfighting. You think, oh well, they put the bull in the bullfighting arena with matador, and you think, oh okay, so he kind
Yeah.
of fights him, and this kind of happens. It's way more intense. Like before the bull goes out, they basically
No.
stab him with this short little knife, and then just to rile him up.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Apparently people
Yeah.
go to
Well,
Spain, like my Spanish friends, like people go and they'll go to see the bullfighting and they'll be like, this was not what I expected.
yeah.
It's way more
Yeah.
barbaric.
It is super brutal, and they bulls eventually bleed and then, die.
And you know the matadors there, they're like rock stars. My friend was saying like the matador,
Really.
he's like a mega celebrity, like rock star level celebrity, the guy who fights the bulls. Super interesting.
It would take some guts to get in there with an intentionally angered bull that's charging at you.
Yeah. And they get gored, which is the
Yeah,
greatest
yeah,
word. Getting
yeah.
stuck by a
So,
bull is actually called being gored. I like that.
yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
Red shoes on them, and then they would also put
Mhm.
holy water on them as well, and this seemingly universally would cure them instantly. They would instantly no longer have the need to frantically dance about, and they would be cured, go home, no longer having a problem. And so this finally, about a month and a half, this little dance off lasted, and then the dance plague, this edition of the dance plague ended. So how many actually died? People, it's widely reported like 15 people per day at its peak,
Okay.
or a couple hundred participants overall died. But honestly, I looked really hard to find like a contemporary account, like an actual, like, did this father of toxology, did he say this number? No, I
Mhm.
can't find anywhere where anybody from the contemporary sources says how many people died. So I don't actually know if that's true or if that's just something people say, because sometimes that's the case. Um,
All right.
So that brings us around to what is actually thought to have caused these many instances of dance mania. These were the two biggest ones, but there was lots of isolated ones that were smaller in nature. Like a few dozen people here or there, that sort of thing that happened. And this first one, or this 1518 event, so Paracelsus, so he says that Trauphia, the whole cause of it, according to him, is that the Trauphia woman wanted to embarrass her husband, was his assessment of the problem. And so he says, Paracelsus says,
In order to make the deception as perfect as possible and really give the impression of illness, she hopped and sang, which was all most distasteful to her husband.
yeah.
She's
And
a
then he
bad
claims,
wife doing that dancing.
yeah. And then he claims that other women simply joined in to likewise embarrass their husbands. Was and in his defense, he is at least like the first one to think maybe it's just all in their heads, even though he's got the wrong assessment. Everyone else is like, hot blood and it's a curse from, and he's like, no, they're just doing it on purpose. They're them that's
He's the
doing it. So
closest. Yeah, I don't think this is
he's
that bad.
still way off, but like, he's in the ballpark at least. Um,
Okay.
so modern things. A popular hypothesis I just thought I'd mention, even though it's totally not true, but people say it, is ergotism, which is also called Saint Anthony's fire, and that's from rye and other foodstuffs and stuff. They have that fungus Claviceps purpuri in it that has these alkaloids that cause hallucinations, seizures, mania, convulsions, irrational behavior, and unconsciousness. And these are actually what LSD was derived from, was these alkaloids.
Oh. Well, it's becoming more and more like a rave, with every passing
Yeah.
paragraph.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They got LSD there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but it turns out, no, they didn't have,
It
this
wasn't
is
LSD.
couldn't have been it couldn't be. So we have the author of A Time to Dance, A Time to Die, which is just a great title. This Professor John Waller, he knows how to title things.
Yeah, he does.
So he's a Michigan State University. So he points out a few problems with this commonly touted theory. So
Wait,
ergotism is
so
also
the ergotism's caused by weird stuff in the food that makes people hallucinate the same drugs like LSD.
Yeah, there's a
Okay, cool.
fungus in it, Claviceps purpuri, that ends up producing these alkaloids that, it's like LSD,
It's intense.
ish. As Yeah, so so ergotism though is associated, you get loss of limbs because you get a severe restriction of blood circulation and stuff like that. And so that, and
Oh.
also it's unlikely people suffering from this could have danced around for days on end because of this. Also, the fact that it would last for so many days and all this, and they're convulsing, like all this seems to be like, and there was no after the fact, there was no like everyone was losing their limbs type of thing, not no like widespread gangrene and
Sounds
things like
way
this.
less fun.
Yeah, and so and the 1374 event, which went after the Black Death, that one was so widespread that how did it start in one town and then spread like throughout, spanning countries in Europe? So they all somehow got infected, like, after, like, as it just didn't make any sense, that that could be the cause.
Uh-huh.
So it's, so the real cause is almost certainly purely psychological. It was,
Yeah, it's got to
completely
be.
in their heads, and so, where did I lost my place? One moment. Okay. So yeah, so again, Dance Mania. So we have the most widespread one, perhaps not coincidentally, followed the Black Death and lots of, starving people and lots of dead people and all this. So basically extreme stress, everyone's under a lot of stress and all that. And then the 1518 event again, you had the outbreaks of syphilis, you had lots of famine from all the flooding of the Rhine and all that. So this
Mhm.
this brings us to so this doesn't explain. So they all have extreme stress, but why did they all start dancing this hysterical dance? Like, what was that about? And so,
It's like it's gotta be, I'm just gonna guess, like, when
mhm,
you see one person has this and then another person has it, people just start, you know, I don't know what it's called, like the crowd psychology or whatever, where you're like, "Oh, yeah,
mhm.
this person's got it, so, oh, I've got an itchy knee." And the other person's like, "Oh, me too." Then the third person is like, "Me too." And then before you know, everyone's like, "Oh, we've got the itchy knee disease." And it's just no, one person had an itchy knee and the other person thought they did. And then it's just in
And
your
this
head.
exactly, and in this case, not only that, you'll note that almost all the instances of dance mania are around this Germany, France, like they're right on the border and all this, around this region where there
Yeah.
was a long, deep-seated belief in this dance mania that you could get, cursed by Saint Vitus. And so, like, if you have a lot of things going wrong in your life, and then you will so you have all this anxiety, this stress, and you have no outlet, it's just everything's crappy, and then I'm cursed. That's what's happened here. And then so you just start dancing, because that gives you also that's one of the cures too of Saint Vitus is just to dance it out. And so then, of course, when you're doing this, and then as you say, other people see it, they're stressed too. And that's, I mean, you could imagine seeing people actually dancing like this would not be funny. Like it would be like, whoa, like
It sounds pretty terrifying. Like this
yeah,
isn't some regular, da 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 dance. These people are
yeah, no,
raging.
this you can imagine more like a zombie movie, like just like hundreds of people
Great,
all around,
yeah.
like bloodied, and like jumping around, and some of them were even like would go and attack people nearby, and if they didn't start dancing as well, so it's like exactly like zombies, really. Um, so
Less
this is
brain
what you're
eating.
actually witnessing. So yeah, this doesn't exactly lower your stress levels, and then you think, well, maybe I'm cursed too. They're cursed, clearly. So we're all cursed here. So then they start dancing as well, and so we have so many examples of this outside of Dance Mania. So we're gonna go to so we have like the running amok
Mm.
or the 1962 Tang. I don't know. What do you think?
I remember
Tanganyika?
this from a video we did, and I couldn't find a pronunciation for it online. So I think I just went
Oh,
with
I'm gonna go
Tanganyika,
with
but
Tanga. Yeah, yeah, that sounds good. So the laughing epidemic of 1962. But what people don't talk about with this laughing epidemic, it wasn't just laughing. So it did start with three little girls in school where it began giggling and laughing, eventually seemingly uncontrollably, starting on January 30th, 1962. And this
yeah.
laughter then sort of sporadically, it wasn't like all of a sudden everyone started laughing and they couldn't stop, for good. It was like, this group might laugh, this pocket might laugh for like an hour, and then this pocket, like it would jump up again around here. So but this again, what's not reported a lot is it wasn't just laughing. They were jumping around, rolling around on the ground. They were fainting. They were showing signs of like extreme anxiety, a little bit similar to the dance mania,
Mm.
bit not quite as violent, but they still like kids fainting and passing out from it, and exertion, crying. There was like weeping and all this. It wasn't just laughing. And so this occurred for 4 months, like off and on. And they ended up having like 60% of the students in the school were affected at one point or another. They eventually had to close down the school temporarily. It soon spread as news got out. It soon spread to other villages where other schools, it was 14 schools had to temporarily shut down, and over 1,000 people, mostly children, were affected, and notably here, mostly poor children. The rich kids didn't really seem to have this problem. And so blood samples were taken and all that, and there was nothing wrong with any of them. So moving over to running amok. So this
Yeah.
one, if people don't know, comes from
Just
the
hang on before you do. I just
uh,
say like the laughing thing, outside of
uh,
the extreme anxiety and all those other symptoms. This is definitely contagious because I
yeah.
don't know, especially when you're like these are girls and kids.
Yeah, you can
I
imagine
remember
the
when I
the
was at
first 3
school.
girls might have just been, like, genuinely laughing and then just, like, kept going, you know?
Or even not. I don't know. From my personal experience, I found laughter spreads most in those situations when you're not supposed to laugh. Like,
Yeah.
I don't
Like
know,
in a strict
at
school like they were at?
in church, where it'd be
Yeah.
like, and someone would just laugh for no reason, and then you'd also be like, and then before you know it, like everyone on your row is laughing, and then it's just, and everyone's just like, I just remember being, you'd just be like, get it together, don't laugh, don't laugh, it's not appropriate, but it was,
Yeah.
yeah, it does
Yeah.
spread.
Yeah. And then, of
Or when you're
course, with
being
these
told
kids, it
off
was
by a teacher.
Mhm. Yeah, well, and you can imagine these were strict schools and whatnot. This teachers
Yeah.
were probably like, "Stop laughing, kids." But anyways, going back to running amok, so we have the people this comes from the Malay culture, and so this
Mhm.
is actually, again, like we say, like you have that expression, in
Yeah, we do.
the UK? Okay. So, yeah, it's just,
Especially you'd say it to like kids, maybe.
yeah, you're running amok. It's like sounds like a joke, but in reality, the Malay
It's
culture, it
horrible
wasn't a
in
joke.
real life. We made a
It
video
was
about
more like
this.
the movie Falling Down, if people have seen that one, where the guy just snaps and goes on a murder spree. This is exactly what happened. So they would go run around, basically try to kill anyone they came across. Like, literally just you couldn't
Yeah.
reason with them. They would just like they were crazy all of a sudden, and like a perfectly normal person would just suddenly snap. And so this was first described in 1516, or at least in documented evidence of it, in the book of Duarte Barbosa, an account of the countries bordering on the Indian Ocean and their inhabitants, where it notes,
There are some of them, the Javanese, who go out into the streets and kill as many persons as they meet. They are called amako.
mhm. And so, because it was thought they thought the evil spirits caused this, so the person wasn't doing it of their own free will. So if they survived the event, they actually were often only given really light punishment, even though they might have killed many people.
Ghosts in the
And so,
blood
and
again.
Yeah, I know, right? That hot blood. But yeah, so evil spirit caused it, and but they often didn't survive because when they were running amok, trying to kill people, of course, people weren't just gonna
Mhm.
stand around and let themselves be killed. They were often attack the person and try to subdue them, and that person would often die in the process. But some survived and often got off scot-free, or with, at least according to accounts, very little punishment because it wasn't them; it was an evil spirit that did it. So important to this is that from accounts that exist, it seems like the people who would run amok also had extreme trauma in their life happen directly before, like loss of maybe they were starving, maybe they had loss of ability to support their family, or maybe deaths in the family, like their family dies or something, and
Mhm.
that sort of thing. So these seem to be the type of things, and so very much like the laughing epidemic, the dance revolution of the ancient times. This seems to all like happen after times of extreme stress and to people who are under extreme stress, and so this brings us to the so going back to the laughter epidemic. So Professor
Yeah.
Christian Hempelman, who did I believe it was his PhD paper that he actually did covering the laughing event. So he's now actually a professor at Texas A&M. So he states,
In 1962, Tanganyika had just won its independence. The young people involved reported that they were feeling stressed by the higher expectations of their teachers and parents.
and again, of the 60% or so of the people in that first school that were affected, pretty much all of them, or the majority of them, were really poor. And so the doing well academically was basically their way out. And so they were under a lot of stress and pressure to excel there, to,
Ah.
actually have a life at some point. And that's when interviews were done and stuff to sort of investigate this. It was found that the students consistently reported they were under a ton of stress um, at the time
Hence why the
to do
rich kids
well.
were less affected.
Yeah, exactly, and so, in this case, it doesn't seem so. In the running amok, there was that sort of however it started. There was that pre-existing belief that there was an evil spirit doing it. So people had that. So like
Yeah.
if they suddenly felt like they snap, they just felt like, they had this pre-existing behavior of, okay, when that evil spirit comes, you go and you kill people, like that's what you do. And so it was like this accepted thing. And so they kind of had a pre-existing idea similar to the Dance Mania of what would happen if you're cursed or whatever. And so
Yeah.
in the laughter case, it doesn't seem like there was any sort of starting there, but like as you say, it just takes a few people to spark laughing, and then if they're under extreme stress, they have a lot of anxiety, and all of a sudden, they're just laughing hysterically and jumping around, and they get in this kind of weird mental state. Um, and so, yeah, so we've already covered that.
This is the uncut version. You get all these exciting interludes
Yeah.
while David finds his
Yeah, because
place.
we did this whole section earlier.
Yeah.
Um,
It sometimes gets chopped around.
yeah.
By the way, I'll just jump in now and say after we finish recording this segment, we'll do a Q&A. So if you have questions for us, put them up in the chat on the live stream and we will answer those. Did you find your place?
All right. Yes, I did. So this brings us to another example, and this is a pretty clear-cut example of it's a similar behavior but slightly different. But again, the expectations were there, where people had a very expectation of what would happen if you kind of get in a certain state. And so in this case, we're going to go with nuns, and it was nuns in the same exact era, the sort of the 15th to 17th centuries in this case. So there's numerous accounts of these nuns. So sometimes groups of nuns, sometimes individual nuns. It often expanded to groups that would just snap and exhibit this sort of behavior. So we're going to start a 1491 event as an example. So there's a large group of nuns that suddenly started acting like animals, including dogs, cats, and birds. They were running around screaming hysterically, convulsing, acting super lewdly, like towards the priests who were trying to exorcise the demons and like trying to get the priest to have sex with them. And you want to read the names of the demons?
I've been laughing for like 2 minutes because I read ahead and read the names.
Yeah, so the nuns yeah.
So the nuns that give, like, they'd call themselves demon names, like ash-colored pussy and dog's dick. I'm such a child.
Yeah, so these were, is not exactly typical nun behavior. So they
Sorry.
So again, these seem to be groups of nuns that were under a lot of stress. So you consider a nun, a lot of these nuns, they didn't become nuns on their own will. They were put in these convents, against their will often, just sort of like the parents' way of, getting, because nuns had a somewhat comfortable life in a lot of respects, but they were also completely awful because they were expected to not just behave perfectly, like perfectly morally, but also the thoughts in their head. Like you couldn't even have, sinful thoughts. And so they were under a lot of stress to just be like think and act perfectly all the time in an environment where everything was controlled. Maybe they didn't even want to be there. You could see why this would be like a high stress, high anxiety, especially because these people, they're generally believing, like if they're thinking these immoral thoughts, like now I'm like evil and I need to go confess my sins or whatever. But so they when they were struggling with these sorts of things, you could see why it would be super high stress and they're going to snap eventually. And how they snap is textbook example of how the description of what being demon possessed would be like at what people thought at that time period. And it's not perhaps coincidental.
Of course it would be. Yeah, this can't be a coincidence. It's like they're super familiar with what it's like to be possessed by a demon.
And so as soon as they sort of feel that like, oh no, it's demons taking me over, so they act that out, and then they, generally, it's not like faked at that point. Like it becomes like genuinely, they're a little crazy in the head at that point. And you can see why the exorcisms would then work because they have the preconceived belief that the exorcism will work. Same with the Saint Vitus's thing. It was believed, the people believed if they just went and did that it would cure them of their dance hysteria. And you see this. We're going to get into some less not religious related events where the exact same thing happens. Where people believe a certain thing will cure them, and then magically it does. And so, So going back to Dr. Hempelman, so he notes of many such mass hysteria events.
Now we call it mass psychogenic illness, MPI. It's psychogenic, meaning it's all in the minds of the people who showed the symptoms. It's not caused by an element in the environment like food poisoning or a toxin. There is an underlying shared stress factor in the population. It usually occurs in a group of people who don't have a lot of power. MPI is a last resort for people of a low status. It's an easy way for them to express that something is wrong. That may be why it has come to be associated more often with women.
Yeah, and so you can see that classically, historically, why children and women were the ones who really seemed to be affected by this a lot, because of course, historically, children and women had no say in anything. Their life was just controlled in every facet, and high stress because like a woman would be running the household, all that. What if there's no food? She's still expected to figure something out, to put something together. She's still expected to manage the household and make sure everyone's being, in a certain time period morally morally correct and all that, and so in charge of all this stuff. High stress, has no say in anything. And the nuns, the same type of thing. They're sent to these convents and live with. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there's no food, so I didn't prepare dinner. And I'm also called Dog Stick. No.
Yeah. Yeah, and significant here is that the cases of this and Dance Mania and a lot of these ones, now we will get into there's modern, sort of more isolated instance of this
Yeah.
type of thing, but a lot of these things kind of go away when people stopped believing that, like that would be the correct behavior. Like if you got demon possessed and like that around like the 18th, 19th century, all of a sudden people believe different stuff. They no longer think you're going to get this Saint Vitus's dance thing, and suddenly people stop
Yeah.
getting Saint Vitus's dance. So
It's all very circular and all very like, oh well, if this happens, that happens, and then I feel like you
yeah,
need to just isolate the people for a proper
yeah.
scientific study, and we'd figure all of this out.
Yeah,
But
and, speaking of that, so Dr. Hempelman, notes.
it's more common than you think. It usually starts in a school or in a workplace when people are in a stressful situation and they don't have the power to get out of that situation. This happens in Lafayette, Indiana.
Yep.
I was going to say industries. And then I was like, no, that's not what it stands for. Continuing, a couple of years ago, they get someone to spray the area to comfort people who were involved. People involved say that there were a bunch of bugs and they were all stung by it. They don't admit that it was hysteria.
Yeah.
Wait a second. What happened?
So, when stuff like this happens, people never want to admit that they were, like, psychological hysteria. There's a cause, there's a microbe, in this case, there's some bugs that stung us all, and that's what caused us to have this reaction, this sort of thing. And so, a good example of this, February of 1787, actually going back a little bit, the cotton manufactory at Hodder Bridge in Lancashire. Is it Shire? Lancashire or
Lancashire.
Lancashire? Lancashire,
Lancashire.
England. I was wondering that because you had the Worcestershire sauce, right?
Worcester, so Worcestershire. I
Worcester
think both are
Worcestershire.
acceptable because I looked this up once. I think
Yeah.
Worcestershire and Worcester are both acceptable pronunciations when you're talking about Worcestershire sauce. If someone wants to mention in the live chat, then we will know for sure. I'm not certain though. But it's also, I think it's Lancashire, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Pretty sure
Anyway,
it's
England.
Lancashire.
So this is so reported by Dr. William Clare, who is the one who went to investigate the incident. So he talks about how I should say, I don't know if I said, was it cotton manufacturing? I don't know.
I think you did.
Anyway, it was a cotton mill. He goes to investigate, and then he notes.
A girl put a mouse into the breast of another girl who had a great dread of mice. The girl was immediately thrown into a fit and continued in it with the most violent convulsions for 24 hours. That's
Yeah.
intense.
And so this, as you I mean, working at those types of places wasn't the awesomest thing in the world. So either way, the next day, so she's cured after that, apparently.
Working in a
And
cotton
then
mill in 1787, not the most awesome thing in the world. Definitely not.
no. Yeah, so the next day, a few other women,
Uh-huh.
they start freaking out in the exact same way. And so there's again no apparent cause. This continues to spread, and then Dr. Clare is called in, and so he notes when he comes.
By this time, the alarm was so great that the whole work, in which between 200 and 300 were employed, was totally stopped, and an idea prevailed that a particular disease had been introduced by a bag of cotton opened in the house. I'm going to guess it's
So yeah,
not a bag of cotton.
no, and so there 24 people by the time he got there, 24 people had been afflicted, and it wasn't like constant. Again, it was like this, like 24 hours, and then they might come back and freak out again, but like it wasn't like they were nonstop for these several days in a row. Again, it's kind of they kind of would go back and forth
Yeah.
on it, and so then he notes of the afflictions.
Of these, 21 were young women, 2 were girls about 10 years of age, and 1 man who had been much fatigued with holding the girls. The symptoms were anxiety, strangulation, and very strong convulsions, and these were so violent as to last without any intermission from a quarter of an hour to 24 hours, and to require 4 or 5 persons to prevent the patients from tearing their hair and dashing their heads against the floor or walls. This is crazy.
Yeah, they're definitely not like it's not like they're faking it. They're definitely not right in their head at this point. So It is the 18th century. He doesn't think there's anything wrong with them except for extreme anxiety. I mean, this is actually a good diagnosis for a doctor of that time.
Pretty
So this
solid.
is what he thinks is wrong. But he is a doctor of the 18th century, so naturally his cure for extreme anxiety is shock therapy. Because
Okay, so
that's
we've
gonna
moved
make
on from ghosts in the blood at least.
yeah, but the people believed the shock therapy would cure them, and so it did. So they after they were shock therapied, they were all better, completely better, and then he told everyone, at the meal, "Look, there's nothing wrong with any of you, it's just anxiety," and, or I think he said it was a nervous whatever, there's some sort
Mhm.
of 18th century term of nervous something, but anxiety, basically, and so the mill reopens, and there was no further fits at all. Everyone was fine. So he basically told them, "There's nothing wrong with the cotton. There's no disease here. You're just all have nerves, basically," and that fixed it. So a much more recent event, this one 2011, and social media induced apparently.
Oh.
So a couple dozen students at Leroy High School in New York. So, and later one adult who was a
Mhm.
friend had a friend whose daughter was afflicted by this thing. They suddenly started having these facial twitches and exhibiting other signs of Tourette's syndrome. And noteworthy here is one of the people did actually have Tourette's syndrome, and this seems to be like maybe how it all started
Uh-huh.
because it was her friends that started at first, and it kind of caught on a little bit from there. And so the doctors, doctors in the state came and examined too, because you have all these students from the school that are afflicted by this nervous twitching and like all this and what's going on here. And so the state comes in, doctors look at them, and they're like, "Yep, they're just really stressed out. That's all that's happening here." And so this was super controversial because everyone wanted to act like there was a cause. And I think that was it Aaron Brockovich? What is that? The one that
Is that the
sued
one with the
something
lead
about
in the
water.
water?
Yeah, she tried to come in this one and also act like it was something to do with a train derailment that spread some chemicals or something like that, but it
Mhm.
didn't. That was no connection. They examined everything, and of course, it
I
was
feel
just
like I've
these
seen the Aaron Brockovich movie, but wasn't that actually a real thing?
yeah, it was. I
It
don't know
wasn't
how,
in their
like
heads,
I
right?
believe in that movie, they make her seem a bit like a hero. I don't know if she actually was or if she was like, if they paint her really nicely. I really don't know the details of the
I
actual
don't know, I
event.
think I saw it like 20
This
years
one,
ago.
she in this story, she doesn't end up looking so good, but, I didn't really write that part down, so either way,
Okay.
so they go look at him, the doctors just say, "You're stressed out. Get off social media for a while. Go do these things to reduce stress." And magically, the girls, it was mostly girls, were friends of this other girl, were cured. But the ones who didn't do that, who continued to go on social media, post about their thing, some of them went on talk shows and stuff to talk about their thing. They magically continued to have the thing and literally couldn't stop this twitching and Tourette's like behavior. They took longer. They were all cured eventually, but it took them longer. The ones who actually took the advice of just doing these stress reducing things, it went away. And the one adult, Marjorie Fitzsimmons, she also noted that she was like, "Yeah, I was super stressed out at the time, so that totally makes sense." And her symptoms
Mhm.
also, I forgot to put the quote in, but she actually had a thing where she said it was like when she felt even more stressed, she would have more tics and more of the Tourette syndrome thing. And when she was less, it would kind of go away. And then eventually, when she worked through it and her stress, and then it just went away completely. Um, so again, because of all the skeptics and stuff, people didn't want to accept this. They were like, no, there's got to be something actually wrong with them. But so a Dent Neurological Institute Dr. Laszlo Metzler, he sort of summed up his opinion on it, though.
The vindication for us is that the patients are better. They've got their lives back.
Yeah. So
There you
it
go.
definitely seemed the stress thing. It seemed to fix the problem. And once again, and this actually happens. There's so many accounts of this. It's usually isolated now. Do like the Dr. Hempelman or
Mhm.
whatever the guy's name was. It's like to factories and things like this where people might be really stressed out, like a whole mass of people, and then one person, like you say, "Oh, I got a itch in my knee," and now everyone's got an itch in their knee, type of thing. And this is just, it's actually it happens a lot. It's not totally uncommon
Mhm.
at all. Yeah, and that is today's episode. Other than the feedback, because we actually some good feedback this time.
Oh, we do.
Yeah,
This was a
I
nice
I
one.
w-
It's all it Sorry, go on.
yeah. I have I separated it for two feedback, one for the podcast and one for YouTube.
All right. Which one do you wanna do
Yeah,
first?
yeah, the podcast. So then we can stop that.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So the first one
Do you wanna
from
lead
Daft
the
Tool.
charge? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, Daft Tool. This is a reference to. Well, I'll let you read it and then we can talk about it.
Dovetool writes, my giraffe video shows a giraffe bull doing the Flehmen response, testing the
Yeah,
urine of a female. Flehmen?
yeah,
Cool.
that's where they drink the pee, basically. And well, it's really when they do the thing with their. You've seen like horses where they'll like take their lips up and then kind of show their teeth, type of
Oh
thing. Have you
yeah,
seen this?
yeah,
And, like
yeah.
hold it open, like that's cats do that sometimes too. When they smell something, they'll do that where they kind of. It's
I've
that.
not seen that,
Yeah, that's what
but I am familiar
this
with
is
the
called.
horse one.
Yeah.
Ignore the music. They pulled my other song. I assume that's just reference to the video music. We used to have a 15-foot female that would back up to us when she was in heat. She had been hand raised, so sometimes preferred the company of people more than other giraffes. The bull giraffe did not like this. He would get very pissy.
Yeah. Yeah, and so people who missed that episode, that was they would back up. The females back up when they want you to mate with them or to taste their pee and then maybe mate with them. So they back up to the males they like, and so this.
Yeah, if you missed our
Kind of
episode
funny.
about the bizarre animal mating habits, we just did like an hour and a half about animals mating. I think it was last
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
go back
then
and listen to that.
the next one, Anthony Charmante. So we also talked about the stone babies, and so he actually there's a stone cow baby apparently.
My family had a cattle ranch in the 1980s, and we had a cow give birth to a nearly full-sized calf that was petrified. And calves are big. Like I've seen
Yeah,
these. This is
that had to
not
be
like a
painful.
small thing.
Well, it could have been small
Woo.
because it didn't have to be necessarily full
Full
grown.
calf. It
Oh,
says right there, nearly full-sized
wow.
calf.
Ouch! How did that cow survive that?
It's intense. Well, there was that woman who lived to be like,
Yeah,
oh, you mean the give birth? Yeah, I don't
yeah,
know. For 2 or 3 years, we had been
yeah,
having her bred with no success until she passed that petrified stillborn. Also,
uh,
we've got quite the range of people listening to this. We talked about 2 things that came up, and one person who
yeah,
rears giraffes and another person who breeds cattle. Eh,
yeah, yeah, and then
and had a
well, and then Charles Martin, talks about so we had the dead duck day with the male duck that got raped by the other duck.
Charles
So
Martin says, watch videos of turkey hunts, and you will note that when 2 or more toms are in vicinity of each other, the one shot will be sexually assaulted by the others. This is interesting due to toms being so skittish about sounds after blah, blah. This is interesting due to toms being so skittish about sounds that after hearing a shotgun blast, they don't run or fly away, but proceed to sexually assault the dying fowl. There
yeah,
you go.
yeah.
Poultry.
Male turkeys are the worst. In high school, I had to help raise them, and you go into their little pen, and they all act like they're gonna attack
Yeah.
you. When they start to get old, they fluff up, and they're all like around, and they're huge. They're not small, and they got their big talons, but they're also really stupid. So I used to bring like a replica samurai sword that was shiny, and literally they would start to like come at me, and I just like hold out the sword, and then they'd just be like, "Whoa!" and like completely different. Like, what is that? Like, and you just kind of hold it, and they just like their little heads bobbing, like looking at it and stuff. It was hilarious, but yeah,
Turkeys
dumb.
are dumb.
So dumb.
Mm. Dreyhawk
Dreyhawk.
said,
Yeah.
actually, the movie Junior. Oh, okay. So we were talking about, the bonus fact last week blew my mind that kind of biologically, with a little bit of tweaking, a man could have a baby.
Yeah, it's probably not gonna be I mean, it could be a super healthy baby, but it'd be high risk. 'Cause
Yeah.
someone yeah. Yeah.
So Dreyhawk says, actually, the movie Junior was pretty accurate when it came to preparing for sustaining a pregnancy in a man's body, including the risk as it neared term of getting tangled in the man's intestines. They definitely did their research.
That's the one I hadn't really thought about. Like that would almost definitely happen, right? Like all those intestines in there, so yeah.
Well, this is why I thought it was so crazy, because you're like, oh yeah, it can just feed off the liver. I'm like, what? It can?
Yeah. Well, and that does happen with women sometimes, and there are ones who survive and are fine, but there is a high risk of I don't remember what we said the percentage, like 25, 50% or something of birth defect, something like that. But
Yeah.
but yeah, like it's amazing that they don't all get, entangled in intestines and things like that, but either way.
Crazy.
Rich Ditchard on this one came from the website comment actually.
Is that on
Oh
our
wait, I
forums?
skipped one.
Oh yeah,
Crappy Zio.
Yeah. He says, and David, it's nuclear, not well. How do you say nuclear?
Nuclear, but I think I responded, "You can take my nuclear when you pry it from my cold dead hands." Because no, it's just from Oklahoma. I lived in Oklahoma for a little bit, so for a while I said things like light bulb and ambience and breakfast. Breakfast is one that stuck around for a lot of years.
What the
I
hell
finally
is
do say
that?
a breakfast instead of breakfast.
What's
So
breakfast?
breakfast in Oklahoma is how you say breakfast everywhere
No.
else. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
I used to
And
have
you
a really thick country accent too. There I was on this like, one of them kids local TV shows, they're like those little stupid, I don't remember what name it is, but like I have a video of that and I had like the thickest country drawl, even though I only lived there for a couple years. I don't know how I got it, and then I like had it for, I don't know, 6 months when I moved back to the Pacific Northwest, and then it just magically went away. And at no point did I
Huh.
realize that it was just because people would make fun of me for it. But I don't know. But I still had the breakfast for a while, and I still have the nuclear. So
How would you spell breakfast?
and I can actually remember one time I got it wrong on a spelling test for that exact reason, and I said to my teacher, "But you say breakfast," and she said, "Yes, but it's spelled breakfast." She didn't say you don't say breakfast, because she said it that way too. But that's so I distinctly
Wow.
remember that.
There
Yeah,
you go. Anyway,
yeah,
you wrote about, taking the nuclear from my cold, dead hands. I just
yeah,
commented that. Welcome to my actual life every
yeah,
day. At least you're an American. Like, at least you say it like most of the people listening to our videos. I'll say controversy, and people are
oh
like,
yeah,
is that, now I get it confused. How do you say that?
controversy.
Controversy. That sounds more British somehow. Like, controversy,
Yeah,
controversy.
a little bit.
Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, but no, I'm not pronouncing it wrong. I'm pronouncing it in the way that I've pronounced it for the 32 years of my life.
Hmm. Hmm.
Rich Dickard, Dicard,
I went with Ditchard.
Dickard. Sorry, Rich. Hey, post on the website. If
Yeah.
you posted these on your Patreon, I would pay for them. Wait, what's he talking about?
I think we probably made comments about how much money this podcast costs us.
Yeah. Oh, the
It's a lot.
hosting costs you've got this weird problem with podcasts because they can get popular before you get sponsors. Like they can be popular
Yeah.
enough to cost you a fortune in hosting, but not popular enough
Yeah.
to attract sponsors, which is pretty much where BrainFood lies right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. It's that, I don't know, $600-700 a month or something for the hosting alone, and then the fees for audio processing and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not cheap. He says, I know it costs y'all a lot. So maybe getting some upfronts a week before or something would help incentivize you. I sincerely hope you post more. I've been checking back weekly since you stopped posting them. Well, we're back.
Yeah. We are
There's
back
that.
now. So now yeah.
So should we wrap up the podcast there and then we'll do some YouTube feedback?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been another episode of the BrainFood Show. We're back on a regular schedule, it seems. We're being pretty good at this for like 3 weeks in a row now. So,
Yeah.
subscribe, leave us a review, all of that amazing stuff. Do we have a winner for the contest? No winner for the contest yet. We'll do that next week. I know we've said that like 3 weeks in a row, but we are if you leave us a review every now and again, we give away like an Amazon gift voucher just for fun. Why not? I'm not going to go through all the details of that now, but if you leave us a review, that would be amazing. And we'll be back next week with another show. See you then. All right. Hold tight, YouTube people. I'm just going to stop my recording. All right. You good?
Yep.
Cool. So people say Warpstone says, may I suggest dropping Skype in favor of another app like Discord? Skype is seemingly incapable of delivering quality audio these days. I hope today's audio quality was a lot better.
Yeah. How is my Simon's is always going to be good, but how is mine this time?
Because previously I was hosting the upload, so it was taking
Yeah.
direct from
Yes.
me.
And I would go in through Skype, and there's no way to fix the audio to be better.
I'm also going to bring up the little chat on my computer here because I keep having to go over there to look at it. And there's still a delay. 323 people are watching this right now. How exciting.
That's crazy. It's like in the middle of the night, except for Australia. This is for you.
Oh, hello. I'm getting. I just realized it will play the video on my screen here. David, I assume that person means David. What country do you live in?
Yep.
Didn't we just have a
Oh,
lengthy discussion about this?
I'm in the Pacific Northwest in Bellingham, Washington, right near Canada, which is why everyone thinks I'm Canadian, because I assume the way I talk must be a Canadian accent, or at least this side of the Western Canadian accent, anyway.
Just to follow up on the document from last week, Fortis Prosa says Discord is so much better and it has screen sharing so they can pull up whatever they want and show it while on stream. Honestly, having a good Twitch setup would probably be the best. Then they could upload the final video to YouTube like everyone else. Are you familiar at all with Twitch?
No.
Me
Carl
neither.
does it
I
a
know
lot,
there's a
though.
dude called Ninja who does some stuff on Twitch.
Carl Smallwood does it a lot. We could ask him. He's going to do, for people a little tease, he's going to be hosting Today I Found Out episode here pretty soon. I don't know what he's going to do, what format. I don't know if he's going to do it like he does on Fact Fiend, or if he's going to do the script that we wrote together, like a script form. He was kind of thinking of trying that, but I don't know. He hasn't decided yet. Should be interesting.
Look forward to that.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about our kind of more broad plans for this show and how we see it fitting into YouTube in the future?
Yes.
So what I was thinking is kind of along those lines is we have this show, which is kind of, and in that, in this like broader uncut version is the BrainFood Show, which we then export and have as a podcast, which is, you know, where most people get this from and what we later upload. What I was thinking is we should always have this as kind of like BrainFood Show uncut. And so we just upload this straight as it is, maybe on a separate channel, maybe on Today I Found Out, who knows. And then we do like BrainFood Show highlights where we have clips and it'll be just facts that stand alone. Like I love Joe Rogan's podcast does this amazingly well, where they have kind of these individual bits of his longer interviews, which are super interesting as standalone segments. Same for H3H3. They do this really well. And I was thinking, because, you know, so much of our stuff is fact-based, you can have individual little fact-based, you know, 5 to 10 minute or 1 to 2 minute, whatever, clips from the show that stand alone as themselves and have that as a BrainFood Show highlights channel or playlist or whatever. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And importantly,
what do people think?
What do the people think?
Yeah, what do the people think?
Let us know in the comments. That's kind of what we're thinking of, because we've already got it all recorded at that point. It's just making it as accessible and enjoyable as possible for you guys who are watching. It wouldn't obviously change anything we do now. It would just be a slight change. And we'd do it live and all of that stuff. It would just be a slight change of delivery, I suppose. Yeah, let us know. Should we see if there's some questions?
Bailey
go
Tapp
on, you got
has
something?
been asking many times, speaking of Canada, do people in Canada really drive aggressively? And we've talked about this before, but yes, you can always tell the Canadian drivers in Bellingham. You don't need to, it's just like the people who drive really, really badly in like every way imaginable. And then you're like, I bet you that's a Canadian. And then sure enough, there's the beautiful British Columbia license plate. And then you go to Canada, and I don't know if it's just a Vancouver thing or what, but this is a thing that's known. Everybody knows this. Super aggressively, super like road rage, super random, like the way like they'll drift into your lane randomly, like for no apparent reason, and then not seem to notice. And then like, but then it's so contrary to their actual, like the Vancouverans are like the friendliest people on the planet and funny, and you know, but then they get behind the wheel.
Yeah. Good friend of mine here in Prague is from Vancouver. Super nice guy.
A bad driver?
I don't think I've ever seen him drive, but now I don't think I'll let him drive my car if he was.
I really don't know if it's like at this point, if it's like a confirmation bias thing where it's just like, oh yeah, like I remember those ones, but it is so often where it's just like, yeah, Canadian driver. But either way, it does seem to be a thing. I don't know if it's actually a thing or if it's just confirmation bias or whatever, but it is a thing that people say around here and seems to be. It's noticeable to a certain extent anyway.
Yeah. Bailey chap, I hope you're glad you got that question answered, because I'm going through the question thread here. I see it like 8 times.
Yeah, Chris Dow says he's lived in both Canadian coasts, and the Vancouver drivers confirmed are the worst he's ever seen. Why would that be the case? I don't really understand. But you know.
Someone says, say schedule. Schedule. How do you say schedule?
Schedule.
Schedule.
Oh, maybe he's thinking your say schedule. Yeah,
Oh, wait,
schedule. I
my
say
way
schedule.
schedule? Schedule?
I say schedule. What do you say?
Schedule.
Yeah.
Should I say schedule as a British person?
I don't know. It
I
does
thought
sound
that
more
was maybe how you would
sophisticated.
say it. And you would
No.
say aluminum, whereas I would say aluminium.
Yeah. Yeah. You're technically right because of the whole that was the officially decreed. But was it officially decreed just because the rest of the English speaking world dominated? Because originally, what was it? Originally, I'm not sure which pronunciation was. But now, of course, the official scientific one is you're the one who says it, right?
Wait, for aluminum?
Yeah. Aluminium
Aluminium. Yeah.
is the actual official way, but I don't think it was always that way. I think before there was like a mix, and then they just decided to decide one of the other.
Someone's having a massive go at me for pronouncing Nevada like Nevada, and I looked it up, and it's pronounced Nevada.
Nevada?
Yeah, well, that's
Really?
what they
I
were
would say
saying,
Nevada.
and I looked it up. Well, the pronunciation dictionary I always used was like Nevada, alternately Nevada, or
Yeah,
no, I think
Nevada.
they said locally Nevada. And also, I can't
Yeah,
say
I knew Nevada.
Nevada because it sounds like I'm faking an American accent, like Nevada.
That's true. It does. It actually
Yeah.
does. Yeah, you're right.
And then it's like, if I say it like that, then every British person in the audience is going to be, what's with that, Simon? Why are you pretending to have an American accent? Why aren't you British? It's like,
Yeah. People make fun of your. People think you have a fake accent all the time anyway, because when I write like American things and then you read the American way, and then they're always like, you're like a traitor to Britain and everything.
The maths one is just endless pile of woe for me.
Yeah, which we have a video on that, which people should go watch, because if I remember correctly, the math technically should be right if you're following that's the one that the Americans get right, in the fact that it's not plural. That was a good video.
Yeah. I'm looking for questions. Sorry, I'm half distracted. Question statement. I also asked how Davin's name should be spelt. You got it absolutely correct. Bailey Chap again. By the way, Bailey Chap's got smart because they put square brackets question/statement in square
that's easier to
all
spot.
caps. Yeah, very easy to spot. Smart move, Bailey Chap. Say zebra. I always want to say zebra these days because it means in Czech ribs, like the meal
How's
of ribs.
the Czech coming along?
So it's pretty decent. I mean,
it's been a few years, right?
I've been learning for like 4 years now, but it's my first second language.
If you sit down with Tommy, can you just hold a conversation, or do you have to go back to English?
Yes, I can have a conversation. Dommy's my wife. And she is Czech and speaks Czech. We can have a conversation, but then if I sit down with a random person, it's a lot more difficult because like I took an Uber to the airport the other day, and most of the time I'll just sit quietly. But this guy wanted to have a full-on conversation. I was like, okay, may as well embrace it. It's good practice. And it's tricky, and there's still words I don't know and stuff, so it's a bit halted and stilted, but it's okay. Apparently it's officially decreed by the Queen that I've got to say schedule.
Is that
I don't think it's officially
RP version?
I don't know. Shall I look it up? I can play it for everyone. I can use my favorite pronunciation dictionary.
I don't know what the favorite. I don't know. Canary in coal mine. What's your favorite episode of Today I Found Out? I don't know. I think I don't know, the podcast, at least. I think that I really like the story of the sledgehammer. If people want to go listen to the podcast, the BrainFood Show, the sledgehammer for the poor man's child, which is a super good. I really like that story. I don't know if we actually did it awesome, but the story is really good about the Charles Dickens and how he came up with the Christmas Carol, which is really interesting. And yeah, it's interesting. Everybody should go check it out.
Most of the time these days, I often find myself referencing BrainFood shows as the favorite thing I've done.
Yeah, I know,
I don't know why. I like this show.
Yeah.
Are you ready to hear my pronunciation, man? Pronounce schedule.
Yeah. Schedule, British schedule.
Oh, I'm saying it the American way. Oh, you're right. It is schedule in the UK.
People make fun of you and stuff. You probably don't know at this point because you deal with so many Americans all the time and talk, and you read American scripts so often, and it's like you know.
It's true. I also don't live in the
I-
UK. My friends here
Yeah.
are a mix of,
So you know
Czechs and Brits and Americans and Canadians and Spaniards. It's all over the show.
that
Another one I'm
happens a lot
curious
because
about. Go on, sorry.
I was gonna say I used to have a lot of British authors, and I started to have that same problem where I would say an expression, and someone would be like, "What? What did you just say? Like, what does that mean?" And I'm like, you know, and like like I'd ceased to be able to tell which ones was an American or British.
If I said it's in my wheelhouse, would you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
I was having a
yes, I would.
conversation with a Brit the other day, and I said, "Oh, it's definitely in their wheelhouse." And they were like, "What? What do you mean? There's something in a wheelhouse?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess this is just something I picked up that's American." But if I said to you, "Oh, swings and roundabouts," would you know what I was saying?
No, I've heard that before, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
quite know what we were.
It
Is it the
means,
same?
pros and cons, swings and
Oh,
roundabouts. I don't know why.
yeah, so in Britain, would they say in the ballpark of? Like, is that a
Only
thing?
because I would not say it, but I would understand it because I wouldn't say it because it would make me sound too American, but I would definitely know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
If
There's
I was
so many
hanging
things
out
like
with Americans, I would use it.
that's in learning Spanish. That's the thing. There's so many things like that I never realized that like are these expressions that when you actually look at the words make absolutely no sense, but then you just know it because you know the language or whatever. And that's I don't know if Czechs probably like that as well, but Spanish is like that. They have so many things like that where the words themselves make no sense until you just kind of know what the expression means.
Yeah. Oh,
So
someone
yeah, but
says,
go ahead.
uh, in the swings and roundabouts, what's the pros and cons? Neither. It's just like the whole phrase it means, you can't say it separately. So you can be like, that's a swing and that's a roundabout. Like you could be, that's a pro and that's a con. It's just you can only use it as a encapsulated phrase.
So, Arif Hassan says, if a man underwent the surgery that allowed him to give birth, would he be a mother, father, or both? I mean, a father, right? Like, it's just, that takes precedent over the actual one that was pregnant. You still, like, if it was like one of the animals, what is like seahorses or something where the male actually carries, like, you would still call it a father, right?
Well, yeah,
Either.
but it's also, it would be top of my concern list of things to worry about if I was a dude giving birth.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. We got a video coming out that I recorded yesterday about what happens if, you don't name your child.
Yeah, that was
I
a
thought
good
this, I read this yesterday. It's a good one.
Yeah, that took forever. Was that like 4,000 words or something like that? I gave you the 5
Yeah, it was a real beast.
I gave you
Yeah.
the 5,000 word. I think the 5,000 words is gonna be the longest we've ever done on Today, I found out, right?
You
And
know
that
how
one's,
long I did it yesterday as well. You know how long the raw recording for that before editing it down was? It's
no.
like 55 minutes.
You know what the funny thing is? It's like 5,000 words. I worked on that for however many days it took. I don't remember. I have no clue what it was about. Like, right now, I'm like, I remember it was a 5,000 word script. I don't remember what the topic was or
I
anything.
spent nearly an hour yesterday reading it. I couldn't tell you. I'm looking up. I've
What
got the
was
sheet open in front of me. I could tell you.
okay.
The shockingly recent time British husbands sold their wives at market.
That one is great. I
Yeah,
really
that's a
like that
solid one.
People should like
I
that a
feel
lot.
like I knew this story though. Did we do something about this before?
No, we've never I mean, I'm sure it's maybe mentioned in a quick fact or something, but this was, like, in depth, like, we went I mean, obviously 5,000 words, we went deep.
Yeah, and it was also a lot of like why it's not as crazy as you might originally think it to be.
No. Yeah, it sounds super offensive and like this, and it was actually it was a good thing in a lot of respects for most of them.
Hmm, hmm. Yeah, it's a good episode. It's ultra long. uh, well, I mean, there's definitely we're kind of drifting towards longer videos on the channel, right?
Except
That's kind of
for, people probably I did that so I'm thinking and people can ring in on what they think of this idea. So, originally Fact Quickie, I was thinking of doing, like, these 1-minute long videos, maybe 2 minutes at the most, and that was gonna be the thing despite the fact that the YouTube algorithm's gonna hate that, but I thought that would be fun, like, these little snippet things real quick, no intro, no outro, it's just like boom, boom. Well, there'll be an outro, but it'll just take you to the next one. That was my first idea, but now, because so many
subscribe to
people
Fact Quickie, everybody.
yeah, exactly, so many people have requested that we do like a shorter, like Too Lazy Didn't Watch. Today I found it longer, and I thought as we get the videos longer and
Hold on.
longer,
Does
as we're kind
TLDR
of
stand for too lazy didn't watch or too long didn't read? Or too
didn't,
long.
yeah, didn't, yeah.
Ah, okay.
I always thought it was Too Lazy. Is it too long?
You carry on. I'm gonna look it up.
Okay. So yeah, so the point is there I was thinking of switching now. Redoing Fat Quickie to be more like a short version of the Today I Found Out content. So like, so as we get more like 15, 20-minute videos, which a lot of people are also requesting. So we have like these two groups that want two different things. So maybe, so I'll do like I'll cut out all the extra stuff that we put in, sort of the related stuff, and just get it down to the bare bones to be. And then I did a poll on the thing. I think I got like 50,000 votes or something. And people seem to be like that 3 to 5 minute mark was what the people who wanted the shorter videos, which is about a third of the audience, wanted like 3 to 5 minutes. And so that seemed to be the consensus. So then to take the Today I Found Out super long videos, make them 3 to 5 minutes. And so if you just want a quick thing, you can watch that. If you want the more detail, like if you're interested and you want more detail, you could click over. Or of course, most people would just stay on Today I Found Out, watch it. But there would be, some percentage of the audience that would occasionally like the shorter little coffee break thing instead of the longer. That's what I'm thinking. So what do people think?
I'll go first. I think it's a good idea,
Yeah.
Jaden.
Yeah, I mean, the algorithm's not gonna be kind to it, but I think it doesn't matter, really. I mean, it's some people will like it, so that's really kind of the point.
Yeah, it is. So much of what creation on YouTube is, you got to consider what YouTube wants and what the audience wants and what we want to make, and then balance it all out into something. But yeah,
The algorithm still
the re-
does have that, like, how much of the video they watch, and so I think that's gonna score really well on that, like, if it's a 4-minute video,
but
I
this
bet.
is a much smaller. This is a
Yeah,
much smaller factor than just overall watch time.
yeah, exactly, so I'm not gonna get promoted as much, but, some people will like it, I think. I'm gonna try it anyway and see how it goes. Um,
The overarching thing we've always found, I've always found on to several channels that I do is, YouTube rewards you if you make good stuff.
yeah, it's true.
Generally, especially
And
over
you
the
talked to
long
that
term.
you talked to that algorithm guy, that
I
sounded
did.
fascinating
I
to me.
did. I was at the YouTube Creator Summit last week, and I got to talk to the kind of head of engineering or engineering director or whatever it is at YouTube, and that was an interesting conversation. I'm not sure how much of that I'm supposed to talk about, so I just won't.
Oh,
But
I was so jealous of that because, like, literally in college when I was doing my computer science, that was like my hobby was like studying all this was like the earlier stuff, social media stuff like
I
Dig
was
and
in that meeting and I was like, Damon would love this.
oh, I know because I used to like create accounts to actually study the algorithms, like how they sort of do different things with these different accounts and see. And it was a great way to produce a power account, FYI, on Dig when it was actually a thing. But the like I can't even remember all the different social medias that were back. Most of them are gone now. But Delicious was another. I don't know if Delicious is still around. But just like studying the algorithms and that, yeah, it was super. When you said you got to talk to the YouTube algorithm, like, oh man, I would have
Yeah.
loved that.
No, it was a good conference or event or whatever you want to call it. Lots of lots of good information and a fun time. Someone says,
Yes,
question please read.
we have a
Yeah,
we
go
have
on
done
after you.
defenestration of Prague where they threw the politicians out. So Zaso Hacker asks.
We have done that one
Yeah, where they
a long time ago. It's probably in the old format.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's available. Someone says, question please read. I don't know. Someone said, did you see the episode of Adam Ruins Everything about who really ruled the Wild West? What do you think about brothel women being the ones who built the West with sex money? I don't know anything about this. I've heard of Adam Ruins Everything. I'm not sure I've ever
I
seen it.
used to watch
Is it a
some of
podcast?
his no, it's a show on some channel. It was originally on College Humor, and then he spun that to a TV show, like a proper TV show. And I remember, I think the first season I thought was actually pretty good for what it was. I mean, obviously they take liberties because it's humor and they're trying to be funny and exaggerate certain things to make it a little more entertaining. And they leave out a lot of stuff to sort of create their narrative that they want to talk about. But for the most part, it actually seems pretty accurate mostly. But then I feel like I watched some episodes and they kind of went downhill, I thought, but maybe they haven't at all. Like they had one, I can't remember what it was on, but it was like super inaccurate. Um, and then I didn't really watch. But they were funny, and the first, I don't know, maybe it's still around, I think so. Maybe they're really awesome. I really don't know anymore. But yeah.
It's one of those things that I bump into, like whether on Twitter or on YouTube or just talking to people, but it's something I've never really checked out. I should probably do that. Maybe I'll do that while I have my lunch today.
The first season, well, the old College Humor stuff that they used to do was hilarious. The little skits, it was just one of the many College Humor skits. So
I will endeavor to check it out. Should we move towards closing this out?
yeah, we probably should. It's like 1:30 a.m. here.
Yeah, it's 10:30 in the morning here, and I have a full day of work ahead of me. So, though this is technically work, but I feel like it's more we're just having a chat.
For the $2 donation, that actually helps a lot because this costs.
Let's answer his question. How do YouTube Premium users affect your channels?
Good.
Well, we get a slice of the money.
Yeah, and it's a lot better than ads. So yes, if everyone was that would be awesome, because also we only get monetized, like half our views is monetized. So the other, whether it's just not giving an ad for whatever reason, or ad block or whatever. So it's like half the revenue, which I'm just going to point this out. If we had double our revenue, we could do a lot more, like so much more. A lot of hiring and awesome improvements.
I'd also finally be able to finish my cloning machine.
Yeah. Yeah, we could. It would be nice, but yeah, it does. Premium, I can't remember the actual ratio, but we get paid a lot more for those views than other. And I would assume then those are 100% monetized, right? That would always be every view, regardless of ad thing.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I can't see why not.
They're not seeing ads, so ad block is not blocking anything. It's literally just from their subscription price. So that's got to be 100%. So yeah,
I tried to sign up to you. I don't have YouTube Premium. It recently came
really?
to.
No,
It recently came to Czech Republic like a couple of weeks ago. Sorry, I missed that.
How can you work on YouTube and not have that? Like, you see ads all the time.
Oh yeah, all the time. Like Masterclass will not leave me alone. If I hear the guy, and if anyone's seen this ad, they'll get this immediately. If I hear a guy say, "I first cooked my brisket 16 years ago. It wasn't very good," or whatever. Oh, this ad is just half the ads I see are just a dude talking to me about cooking brisket. So, so I tried to sign up for YouTube Premium because I'm like, amazing, immediately, let's do this. And I'm like, okay, great. So I'm about to enter my card details. It's like, oh, we'll do it through Apple. And I'm like, perfect. And then it's like, your store is set, your Apple store is set to the UK, which is what I have generally because it's in English. And I'm like, okay, so I'll switch it over to the Czech store because you need to be in the right geographical location. So I switch over to the Czech store. And then there's some sort of glitch going on because then it's like, oh, you seem to be in the wrong region. And I switch it back and it's like, oh, you can't use this store. And so it seems impossible for me to sign up to YouTube, which is a premium, which is...
Because it also comes with the Google Play Music. Not that we should be sponsored by them, because it's great. Like, it's an actual great service because, like, you get the music, you get the no ads on YouTube, which is awesome. And also, Stephen Penrose, thank you for the 99 cents. That's actually helpful.
Oh, I say DKK. Do you see an actual... I don't know what a DKK... Oh, someone gives DKK, which I want to say is Danish Corona, maybe, but I'm not sure. Danish Krone!
Really?
God, I should go on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, shouldn't I? Just...
Yes, we do get more if you click on them, I think, most of the time. It depends if it's a CPM or cost per click ad, but some are both. For Madison Bunn asked that question: if you get paid when you see ads, right? Do you get more if they click on them? And it sometimes, not always, but it's not uncommon for it to be both.
Cool. Good. Let's wrap it up, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this live stream, uncut version of the extended BrainFood Show. We'll be back next week.
Yes, possible. It could happen.
Good. All right, man. Good to talk to you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will see you soon. We're using new software. I have to work out how to end the live stream. Stop live stream. Thanks, everybody.